All right, now that we've talked about the language of wealth creation and budgeting and freed up some money in our budget, now let's talk about how we save and invest to try to reach those goals. So you've budgeted and identified an amount to save monthly. Where are you going to put that savings? By investing, you put the money you save to work by making more money and increasing your wealth. An investment is anything you acquire for future income or benefit. Investments generally increase by generating income or growing in value. Income earned from your investments and any appreciation in the value of your investments increases your wealth. Obviously, if those investments go down and due to market performance, they can also decrease your wealth too. But generally, over time, those investments, as long as we're being diligent about where we put those dollars, they increase in wealth over time. There's an art to choosing ways to invest your savings. Good investments make money, bad investments cost money. Do your homework. Gather as much information as you can. Seek advice from licensed or registered advisors. States require people to be licensed when they're brokers or investment advisors or insurance people. Okay. So check with the state or any other regulators. FINRA is another regulator. The SEC is another regulator. So check with those websites, make sure the people that you're working with are reputable, and they have their licenses to be able to give you advice. Page 30 on the workbook also gives some helpful websites that you can look at. So I'm going to just briefly touch on compounding interest versus simple interest. Compound interest helps you build wealth faster. Interest is paid on previously earned interest as well as the original deposit or investment. Okay. So if you're in a compounding interest investment, you're getting money on the principal you invested plus the interest the bank or any other savings is giving you. For example, a $5,000 investment earning a 6% interest earns $308 if the interest is compounded monthly. In just 5 years, the $5,000 will grow to $6,744. Simple interest, which isn't in this part of it, but simple interest is just simply interest that grows on the principal and only the principal. So simple interest would maybe be a CD that just puts the interest into a separate account, or a bond that just pays the coupon payment into a separate account, or sends it to you as a check. Let's talk about risk and reward. Okay. When you are saving investing, the amount of expected return is based on the amount of risk that you usually take with your money. Generally, the higher the return, the higher the risk of losing money. Okay. For less risk, an investor will expect a smaller return. So if the rate of return that's told to you sounds too good to be true, you might be taking more risk than you understand. Okay. A savings account at a financial institution is insured by the FDIC up to $250,000. Okay. The return paid on that savings will generally be less over time than other returns that you might take on higher risk investments, like real estate, like stocks, like bonds. Okay. So typically something that's insured pays you less than something that is not insured. After deciding how much risk you are able to take, you can use the investment pyramid below to help balance your savings and investments. You should only move up that pyramid after you have built a strong foundation. And you can talk about a pyramid, you can talk about, I like to talk about a house a lot, right? You start with that solid foundation. If your house isn't built on a solid foundation, you might be picking up the scraps when a heavy wind comes by, right? So that solid foundation is made up of a financial plan. Okay, this is part of a financial plan. Believe it or not, just sitting down and working through this workbook is part of a financial plan. Setting goals, having a budget, keeping good organized financial records is part of a good financial plan. And then, understanding net worth is a good part of a plan. We also want to have a solid insurance plan, which we'll talk about in a different module called protecting your wealth. But Insurance, you want to have life insurance, especially if there's anybody in this world counting on you, and your income. That can be, if you're taking on student loans, if you are, have family, wife, children, or parents or grandparents that are maybe depending on you. Those are reasons to have life insurance. Health insurance. We all know what the cost of healthcare is today. If you don't have a good health insurance plan, medical bills certainly is a large cause of bankruptcy in the United States right now. So make sure you have a solid health insurance plan. And there's ways that you can learn about that, not just through your employer, but also through MNsure in the state of Minnesota, or the Affordable Care Act that is now nationwide. Disability insurance. If you're unable to work, do you have where's your income going to come from? You might have maybe PTO or some short-term disability through work, but really revisiting that and figuring out if I can't work because I'm injured or sick, where is my income going to come from? And then property and liability. And typically this is the one that everybody or most people have because, by law, we have to have our car insured. Obviously, if we have a mortgage on our house, we need to have that insured. But making sure that your insurance policies are solid and you have enough coverage there to replace that asset if something were to happen to it. Okay. Once you have those things in place, then we move up that pyramid. Short term, that might be money you need in the next 3 years. Okay. I would also consider an emergency fund part of a solid financial foundation. And an emergency fund, basically, that's money that, again, if you're sick, if the furnace blows up, if you need a new roof on the house, how are you going to pay for those things? And an emergency fund is good for that. That would also be part of a solid foundation. And also the short-term hold would be part of a solid foundation. And that's maybe even part of an emergency fund, but money that you might need in the next couple of years. If your children are close to college, if you're going to put a down payment on a house, if you're close to retirement, you want to have some short-term assets so you can access those without large fluctuation in those assets, meaning stock market volatility, real estate market volatility, whatever that might be. Medium term would be maybe money you don't need for 3 to 5 years. Okay, again, you're staggering out, maybe you're 55 and close to that retirement age of 60. You might want to have some money in a medium-term hold. Those examples would be CDs, bonds, fixed annuity, fixed index annuities, different things that we won't get into deeply on this recording. But if you have questions on those, or questions that you'd ask a financial advisor or research yourself. Longer-term hold would be 5 years or longer. A lot of times we talk about stocks and equities in that bucket because the longer you hold those, the more chance you have at appreciation. Obviously, those are still subject to risk at the same time. And not until then should you get into more high risk things. Some different tools for saving. A savings account is a great way to start, right? Start with that. Use that for your short-term and emergency fund, for your access to liquidity in case, like I said before, that you need new tires in the car, the furnace blows up, the transmission drops out. Those are things you need the emergency fund for. Money market accounts might give you a little bit more interest. And CDs would be something that might give you more interest, but would be locked in for a longer period of time. So make sure that you're not going to need access to those things before that maturity date on those CDs. But one of the things that we think is very important is diversification. And when you're investing your money, tying your money or putting your money into a product that meets the time horizon and the risk that you're willing to take for when you need that money. Okay. So I wouldn't put if I need money next year, it would be foolish of me to buy a 5-year CD with that money, right? Or a 30-year US savings bond with that money. On the opposite side of that, if I don't need the money for 30 years, it might not be in my best interest to keep that money in my savings account because the interest on that money probably isn't keeping pace with the cost of living that I'm going to need in the next 30 years. This also talks about bonds, saving bonds, treasury bills. I'm not going to get into depth on those right now. Again, if you want a copy of this workbook, we can get you one, or fill out the form, or go to dallasfed.org and order one for yourself. But what I want to talk about when I talk about tying your money when you need it is the rule of 72. Okay. The rule of 72 says if you divide the number of your interest into 72, that's how long it takes your money to double in value. So if my expected rate of return at my savings account is 0.5%, I take 0.5 into 72. Okay, so that's 144. And that's how many years it takes my money to double in value. So if I don't need money for 30 years, that $10,000 in my savings account is not going to double in those 30 years. Okay, so I might want to look at a different way to invest those dollars. Now, if I need the money in the next year, savings account is a great tool because it's liquid and it's very safe. So if you have a longer time horizon, depending on your risk tolerance, you might want to try to get a little bit more on your money. If it's something that's safe, a CD might pay you 5%. 5 goes into 72, right around 14 to 15 times. So using the rule of 72, that would be 14 to 15 years until that money doubles. If I'm willing to take more risk, maybe I can expect 6 or 8% in a blue chip stock, right? Or maybe I would expect 8 to 10% in a higher growth stock over time. Obviously, 6 goes into 72, 12 times. That would take 12 years for my money to double. 8 goes into 72 9 times. That would take 9 years for my money to double. All the while, we understand that there's risk in those investments. So they will fluctuate, but if I look at it in 10 years or 12 years, what would I expect that return to be? If it's 6%, then my money would double in 12 years. If it's 8%, and then it would be 9 years if we look back. A stock really is basically just owning part of a company. Okay. So those stock, when people have stocks, they have ownership in a particular company, whatever that company might be. Most stock ownership is done through publicly traded companies, which we know that are listed, in the Dow or the S&P or different indexes. But those companies we can own, we can buy in a public exchange and own part of those. So if the company does well, we typically see an increase in value of those shares of the stock. If they don't do well, we see a decrease in value. So again, going back to the beginning of this video, when you are making investments, do your homework, make good choices, talk to somebody who's licensed that might be able to help direct you in the right way. Mutual funds are kind of a basket of different stocks or bonds, whatever that asset is. So mutual funds are a way to diversify within the stock market or bond market without buying individual stocks as you go. So mutual funds are a great way for somebody that doesn't have a lot of money to start diversifying from $1. IRAs are different vehicles that we use for retirement. So an IRA is an individual retirement account. It lets you build wealth and retirement security. The money you invest in an IRA grows tax-free until you retire and are ready to withdraw it. You can open an IRA at banks, brokerage firms, and they're subject to certain income limitations and how much you can contribute to it. Okay, so IRAs are kind of the chassis of the vehicle. You can own different assets inside the IRA depending on your risk, right? So inside of an IRA, I could own savings accounts. Inside of an IRA, I could own CDs. Inside of an IRA, I could own bonds. Inside of an IRA, I could own stocks. So an IRA basically is just the house in which you own those assets. And when you own it in an IRA, it grows tax-free or tax-deferred, I should say, until you are ready to take distributions on it. A Roth IRA is really just an IRA that you invest after tax dollars in, so money you've already paid taxes on, into the same type of vehicles. Again, could be any of those things that I just mentioned. But when you withdraw from a Roth IRA, as long as it's been there for 5 years and you are 59 and a half, you have the ability to take that out and not pay taxes on the growth. On the front side, obviously, you don't deduct those contributions. So you've already paid tax on the dollars you contribute to the Roth. 401ks are typically, or 401ks are through a company. So a lot of businesses that we work for offer 401ks. We are able to invest in those 401ks with money that is taken from our paycheck. And generally the same rules apply. It's pre-tax and then when you take it out, you're taxed. Where some companies allow a Roth 401k where you put in after-tax dollars from your paycheck, and then when you take it out, it is tax-free. There's some more nuances to those vehicles that you want to learn about and talk to your financial planner about, but that's generally those are generally some vehicles to use toward retirement and saving and investing. So tips for investing: remember, find good information, make informed and educated decisions. Make sure you know and understand the costs associated with buying, selling, and managing your investments. Beware of investments that seem too good to be true. They might be, so do some more homework on those, especially if the interest rate is higher. Understand that there's more risk in those investments. And again, talk to financial professionals before you invest. Use different websites, can be FINRA, FINRA, can be the SEC, or even your state, to find out who's licensed to help you. Those licensed advisors, if there's been any litigation against them or any complaints, they do have to disclose that. So you can find that on those websites also. Hopefully you learned a couple of things about investing those dollars that you're saving. Continue on with the modules and learn some more things that can help you build your wealth.